Elimelech and Naomi were Israelites who lived in Bethlehem during the days of the Judges. They had 2 sons, and when a famine came over the land, they moved to the nation of Moab. Tragedy struck as the father Elimelech died during the famine, leaving Naomi alone with her 2 sons. Soon after, Naomi's sons married women from Moab. But unfortunately, about 10 years later, both of Naomi's sons also died. Naomi was so sad and decided to move back home to Bethlehem. She wished her daughters-in-law well and prepared to go back home. But one of them, Ruth, would not leave her side. Ruth said, "Where you go, I will go, and your God will be my God." So Naomi and Ruth traveled together back to Jerusalem to live in Bethlehem of Judah. The 2 widows returned to Bethlehem, but were poor and had no other family to support them. The law allowed the poor to glean in the harvest fields, so Ruth went out to a field to pick up the loose grains behind the workers. She worked hard and impressed the harvesters. The owner of the land was also impressed. His name was Boaz. When Boaz asked who she was, he found out that this was Ruth. He had already heard about her because many people in town had heard of her testimony and how she was loyal to her mother-in-law Naomi. Ruth's testimony meant more to Boaz because Boaz was related to Naomi. Boaz wanted to protect and take care of Ruth because of what Ruth had done for Naomi. He allowed her to work closer in the fields during the entire harvest season and made sure that no one bothered her. He also gave her extra grain and barley from his supply so that Ruth and Naomi would have all that they needed. God had provided for Naomi and Ruth, but Naomi had faith that God had more planned for this family. Naomi sent Ruth to Boaz to make a request. Because Boaz was a relative of Naomi, he would serve as a redeemer to her daughter-in-law Ruth. That meant that if he were willing, Boaz could marry Ruth so that she no longer would have to be a widow and so that she would be protected and provided for in all her needs. Ruth obeyed Naomi and went to Boaz to ask him to be her redeemer. Boaz was willing. The next day he made sure to follow God's instructions, and soon after, Boaz and Ruth got married. Now Ruth was no longer a widow. Boaz would provide for her and her family, including Naomi. God had provided for Ruth and Naomi. But that's not the end of the story. The best part was yet to come. Boaz and Ruth had a baby and named him Obed. This was something to celebrate for the entire family, but especially for Naomi. God had restored her family, and now the family would continue on for many years. Obed would become the father of Jesse. Jesse would become the father of David. David was an important king for the people of Israel. David was a man after God's own heart, and God used him to bless his people, the nation of Israel. God wasn't done yet. You see, just like Naomi and Ruth were lost and lonely and in need of a redeemer, the world was also lost. The world needed a redeemer to take away the sin that had entered it. From David came another man. He was the God-man. His name was Jesus Christ. Ruth and Naomi's family continued on from David for many years, and they were relatives of Jesus. Jesus was also God's son. God sent him to the world to redeem the world, to save the world from sin. And for everyone who believes in Jesus Christ, they would be redeemed. They would be saved. The account of Ruth and her family is a story of redemption and faith. Ruth points us to the most important story ever told, another account of redemption and faith, the story of Jesus Christ.